Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring, and another video in which I am going to restore one of the items of furniture from my old 1990s copy of HeroQuest. Now, when you're doing a project like this, sometimes you restore something and it really does make a massive difference. You completely transform the way the item looks and it looks much better than it did before. And I would say things like the alchemist's bench, the treasure chests, and the dice are examples of that from this particular series. But sometimes you restore something which wasn't that bad to begin with, or it's not a very interesting piece, or there's not really a lot you can do with it, and it's not a particularly exciting transformation, and the end result isn't particularly exciting. And I would say that's the case with this throne here. It's probably one of the worst items of furniture in the kit. There's not really a lot you can do with it, and it wasn't in bad shape to begin with, so there wasn't a whole lot that I could do with it. But for the sake of completeness, for this particular video, I'm going to strip off all the paint that's already on there. I'm going to clean up those ugly nubs and bits of plastic that are around it. And you can see we are missing one of the support struts, so I will be replacing that as well. Of course, the first thing we have to do is dismantle it. And you can see that this card element is quite chewed up on the edges, but the folds themselves are quite crisp and clean. So I didn't want to squash it as I have done with other card elements on other pieces. Normally I would spray them with a fabric freshener, squash them out flat, and then refold them. I didn't want to do that because the folds are actually pretty crisp here. But we do want to deal with the fact that the edges are all rough and the card is starting to separate out. To do that, I'm going to apply some PVA glue here where the top layer, the paper layer of the cardboard element has peeled away. I'm just putting a little bit of PVA in there and then smoothing it down flat and trying to get that to adhere back together again. And then I'm going to apply PVA all along all of the edges. And as I do that, I'm going to try and squeeze those edges back together where they have started to delaminate. And applying this glue all along the edge will make the edges stronger, it will make them more robust. It also seals them completely from things like moisture getting into the card. You won't see these edges when the plastic elements are reattached, but it's worth doing just to strengthen the whole thing up. And you can see here as well where the card has got very rough from being chewed up going into the plastic. I'm just going to squeeze that back down flat. And then what I'm doing at the bottom where it is really chewed up and quite evident that it's been chewed up, I'm going to wrap a little piece of greaseproof paper around there. And then I'm going to clip it with a bulldog clip, and that's going to squeeze that card back together where that paper coating has started to delaminate, and should squeeze it all back together and seal it again. And that'll need a few hours to dry. And when it's done, we can remove the clip. And we should now have some nice sturdy edges to the card, and the front has been squeezed back together so the part with the picture on it isn't peeling away anymore. And that pretty much does it for this card element, which was in pretty good shape compared to some of the other furniture in the box. Whilst I was dealing with that, I had soaked the plastic end pieces in Dettol to remove the paint. They were basically left for a few hours and the paint just peels away. I've done a previous video on how to strip miniatures with Dettol. And we now are in a position where we can clean up these rough edges. You will see all the way around it there are little nubs that haven't been cleaned up very well. We can just use a mold line remover or a knife and just scrape those away. And I'm not being really picky with this because it is supposed to be a worn and battered old throne, but I want to get off any of the really rough, scraggly bits and any really obvious lines and nubs that shouldn't be there. So I'm just going to work my way around both of those plastic pieces. Next, I need to make a bar to replace the one that is missing. So I have a piece of rounded sprue here, which is just about the right size. You can see I'm trying to find a piece of the sprue which is long enough for my needs. And having found that, I'm just going to snip it off with some side cutters. And I was quite lucky to have a sprue that is around about the right size, but I'm going to sand it down a little bit, particularly at the edges, to make sure that it fits into the receptacles on the plastic parts of the furniture. When it's all sanded down, you can see it's around about the right length. Having done that, I gave the side parts of the throne 2 coats of Mornfang brown. That's just a dark, rich brown, which is a nice base coat. And then I'm going to use Agrak's Earthshade to do a wash over the whole thing. That will go into the recesses, it will pick out the detail, and just add a little bit more interest to the piece, so it doesn't look quite so flat. As with all of the other furniture in the HeroQuest set, I'm not doing really detailed paint jobs on this. These are just going to be plain wood. I am going to do a dry brush of Steel Legion Drab, just to bring out the highlights, just to bring out the top details, and also make it look a little bit dusty and old. But that is all I'm going to do in terms of painting this. You could, of course, add extra little details, metal feet, maybe some leather inlays. Whatever you want to do, really. And I'm also going to paint the 2 visible edges of the cardboard element. And I say they're visible, but they're not really that visible, so we're not going to go crazy with this. We're just going to do a quick Screaming Skull coat on the bottom piece, which you really won't see unless you tip the throne up. And then I'm going to use Flashgit's Yellow on the top, just to simulate the gold colour, but the top bar will hide most of that anyway. We now have everything ready. We are going to do the final assembly. The support bar that I made, I'm going to put in the bottom hole, because that bottom hole you won't see it. The top bar you will see, but the bottom one is hidden behind the card element. Then I'm going to put the top bar in. You have to be careful with these old bars that the thinner parts don't snap off. And when I put this piece together, I am not going to use glue. The reason for that is because the expansion against the Ogre Horde comes with a different throne. It comes with a card insert that you are supposed to use with these plastic end pieces from the base game. If you glue this piece all together, if at some point down the line you get against the Ogre Hordes, you aren't going to be able to use that new throne insert. So do not glue this piece together unless you intend to source another throne, or you aren't going to get against the Ogre Horde. But as I'm putting it in, I have to be really careful here because it is a really tight fit, and I do not want to crease or crunch the card. But with a bit of care, it all goes together. And that is that. As I said at the top of the video, it is not the most exciting fix, but it was something that needed to be done. And it looks fine. It's just not very exciting. It's not a very exciting piece of furniture anyway, and what I have done with it isn't particularly exciting either. But it is now stronger, it is now more robust, it doesn't have the gnarly bits of nubs on it, it has a new support bar, and it has a very, very simple application of paint. And that is it for this particular video. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.